Hey, Las Vegas fruit lovers, there has been an overwhelming amount of questions in a couple of Facebook groups recently, the Las Vegas gardening community and the Las Vegas fruit growers both, about why are my leaves turning yellow, and 99% of them seem to be on citrus. And there's no one word or one sentence or one paragraph answer to that question. So I'm going to try to do a quick video here this morning and offer some solutions. If you will go to the Facebook page and look over on the left hand side from the main page, there's a column of tabs over there. One of them is files, and in that files section you will find a couple of documents. I'm pretty sure this is in both groups. A couple of documents, and one of them I believe reads yellow leaves micronutrient deficiency, and another one says micronutrient deficiencies in trees. Anyway, if you open both of them up, it can offer some help, but it's also confusing as the dickens, because there's about 12 or 14 different reasons why leaves can be yellow, and it just not, you're not going to be able to break it down to one nutrient that is causing your problem there. So one of them might be zinc, and the other one might be molybdenum, the other one might be copper. And I'll tell you, I deal with some guys with PhD after their names, and they can't even figure it out to that extent. But rather, they'll start a sensible approach, applying basic fundamental nutrition, and then after that they'll do a shotgun effect on it. Now, having said that, I'm not a biologist, I'm not a botanist, I'm not a horticulturalist, I'm not an arborist, but I am a pretty passionate amateur backyard gardener and hobbyist, and I try to find the best way and the best solutions to grow things and do things. So let me start off by showing you some examples, and I have the same problems that everybody else is showing concerns about. Here is this will be fourth summer for this Meyer lemon, and overall it looks pretty good. This is a no problem child for me. It is, if you have children, you know what I'm talking about. Some of them act differently than others, and this one is one of them. And a month ago, or maybe 2 months ago, coming out of winter and going into spring, this lady was showing some deficiencies too. It had a lot of yellow leaves on it, but with the initial fertilization and going into spring, it livened back up and is looking pretty good. And let me say that when you have a tree and you spot a leaf that looks like this, don't go crazy over it. Don't flip out. You're not going to be able to do anything about one or two leaves. Also, these leaves cycle through. A leaf don't stay on a tree forever. So if you've got one or two leaves that are looking a little poor, it could be wind, could be sun, could be anything, just don't flip out over it. If the whole tree is covered in them, then that's a whole different issue. And one of the main things to look at is the new growth that's coming out. If that is healthy new growth, that is a sure sign that you've got things straightened out and they're doing well. The lemon tree is one good child. This is a bad child. This is a kumquat that I put in last year, and man, when it comes spring, it really struggled. And I'm telling you, this tree looked as bad as anything that I've seen on any of the Facebook pages. And I'm not going to edit this video, so just trying to keep it short, so I'm not going to insert the picture that it looked like a month ago, but the entire tree looked just like this. The leaves were yellow, there's dark veins in it. The whole canopy of it was that way, but if you'll look, and you can see that the new growth that has come out on it is nice and green, and it's growing right. These have already set. Here's the new growth coming out, and you see that it's nice and green versus this one below it, and that is characteristic pretty well of an iron deficiency. I'll go over all of that a little bit later, but this one, I guarantee you, was looking as bad as any picture that I've seen over the last month or two. So forgive me for panning, but then we'll walk around and show you a couple of more. Here's a young Satsuma mandarin that is in pretty good shape. A month ago it wasn't bad, but it had some yellow leaves on it, but it wasn't bad at all. A mandarin quite that was actually in pretty good shape, although it didn't bloom and set any fruit yet. So I'm not totally happy with it, but looking at it, it looks pretty good. This one was probably the least deficient of the citrus trees that I have. This lady over here, she was a whole different trouble. And I'm telling you, this whole tree was covered in yellow leaves about a month ago. And it is recovering very well. Even the older leaves have changed. Matter of fact, I don't even know if I can find a yellow leaf on it. This one has got some discoloration, but overall it's looking pretty good. Since those older leaves on the tree have sprung back and are looking good, that kind of lets me know that it was not an iron problem. And the new leaves that are coming out look very healthy. So this one had a totally different problem than the kumquat did. Don't let that bother you. I'll try to cover that in a minute. I'm going to pan again a couple of trees that I have in pots. This is a Lisbon Lemon. It was a little bit weak coming out of winter also, but has responded very well. It's doing good. Here's an example of a leaf that's curled a little bit and looks a little funky and different than something else. I don't let that bother me. If the whole tree looked like that, then it's all good. This one, I left the lemons on it just to see how it would the fruit would do, and it actually dropped the lemons just day before yesterday. So lemon season is over for Lisbon. Another potted citrus that has given me enormous problems over the last few years is the Mexican lime. And this one I had in ground over close to where the kumquat is. And lime is the most suspect to cold of all the citrus trees for us. And this one is a dwarf, so I didn't have any problem putting it in a pot, but I had it in ground. Not this past year, we had a mild winter, but the year before we had a pretty rough winter. And this gal just almost didn't make it. It really struggled through that winter. And I decided I would rather have it in a pot so that I can just easily move it in under the gazebo or take care of it. But I'm telling you, this one was bad enough to where a lot of people would have just probably thrown it in the trash can. You can see the leaves here where the leaves had dropped off of it. It's beginning to fill in those spaces. It's pretty well overall nice and green. The new growth on it looks good. So that can hopefully give you a little bit of hope if you've got something that looks bad, that it can hopefully be corrected. And let me say that the easiest and probably the number one reason for discolored leaves on any tree is going to be water. Unfortunately, if it's too much water, it will produce yellow leaves. If it's not enough water, it will produce about the same similar yellow leaves. The first thing you have to do is understand what your tree needs for water, and there's not a one sentence answer to that. We see that all the time. How much do I need to water my tree? And it's just an individual tree has individual different needs, and my soil over on Sunrise Mountain might be totally different than yours is in Seven Hills. You're going to have to work on that a little bit, but here's what you need to concentrate on. We're not going to get real deep into sprinklers and drip emitters and flood irrigation or any of that, but what you've got to understand is how much that tree needs in order to saturate the entire root zone of the tree down to about 18 or 24 inches. And then before you water again, the time between those waterings is how much time that area needs to somewhat dry out. Now, how dry it gets will depend before the tree stresses will depend on the variety. A fig, for example, can stand a lot drier soil than a lot of the citrus can. And you just got to spend some time doing that. There are some rule of thumbs, and I'll point to that every now and then. And you can use this on a newly planted tree, and it's going to be pretty accurate. That if you put in a 15-gallon a tree that come in a 15-gallon nursery pot, you amend your soil well. That I can about tell you that it's going to take about 15 gallons of water, as a rule of thumb, to saturate that root zone well all the way down to the bottom, and that's going to be pretty accurate. Next year, when that root zone is expanded, it's not going to take 15 gallons of water. It's going to take more, and you've got to explore and figure that out for your individual tree. And as a matter of fact, a tree that's in my front yard has a different watering requirement from one that's in the backyard. You've just got to spend a little bit of time to do it. And one of the things that you can use is a mechanical device that can help you out, and it's a moisture meter. I like this one that has a wand on it because I can go around to all the pots. And where this is really most beneficial is in using pots. It won't tell you 2 foot down when that tree needs to be watered. But what it can do, using it at the surface level, is tell you when the tree doesn't need water. So that will get you started. It don't solve the deep water problem, but if I go here and stick this probe in, this is plenty moist. So at the top, I know that it's plenty moist, and it's probably, by using reason, plenty moist at the bottom. However, if you're watering with drip emitters that you would use in a xeriscape landscape, and it puts out 1 to 4 gallons of water an hour, and you're doing that on a regular basis, multiple times a day or even every day, you may be saturating the top 4 or 5 inches of the soil, and it's doing fine, but you're not saturating the entire root zone and getting down to 2 feet. So you really need to do a deep watering on your fruit trees to keep them healthy and to benefit them. Now, this will help you to say, okay, this might not need watering. It won't tell you that 2 foot difference. Maybe we'll talk about that and some other techniques a little bit later. Some of the moisture probes are a little bit deeper, so that helps somewhat too. You can get down a little deeper than that little hand probe that I've got. So you get down 1 foot deep. I'm plenty moist here, and this one also has a pH meter on it that I don't trust totally, but I want to talk about pH too. And this is just not as good as the soil test kit. Let me get my glasses out. This one is telling me that my pH on this tree right now is 6. That makes me happy. I hadn't checked it lately because when I had tested some of the soil earlier, it was more in the 7.5 range. But we'll talk about pH here in a minute and how you can check that. Now, after water, I'm absolutely amazed at the amount of people that come to Las Vegas and they plant a tree and water it and expect to eat off of it, and there are a few trees you can do that with. The easy trees for Las Vegas, if you want to plant it, water it, and eat it, is going to be mulberry, fig, and pomegranate. Those just offer, a good fruit solution, which I have all of them and I like them. Will they do better with more than that? Yes, you need to feed them and take care of them and all that. But if you want an easy solution, fig, mulberry, pomegranate are the easy solutions. They don't have a lot of pests. They can take our bad soil, our bad water, our intense heat, our cold winters, and they will do fine. Pest-wise, hardly anything other than ants and birds on figs and mulberries. The pomegranate gets the leaf-footed bugs that are a problem for a lot of us during the summer. But other than that, they're the easy thing to do. But a lot of people come to Las Vegas from another part of the country where you can plant a lot of trees and not have to do a lot. to give them any nutrition. They've got a lot of organic matter in the soil, a lot of repeating organic matter with leaves dropping and that kind of stuff. We don't have that here. Our soil is horrible, and you've got to feed your trees, and I'm not going to tell you what to feed them. You're going to have to work that on yourself. Personally, I prefer to use a good organic compost, but occasionally if I find a deal on fertilizer like I did, this fertilizer at Walmart was on closeout last winter at $1 a bag. It is a fruit and nut tree food, 1373, and for $1 a bag I chose to do that this year. You're going to have to work out your philosophy, which it really turns into your philosophy on fertilizing. Now, one thing I don't have with me here is a container for iron, and iron is, I've learned, is very, very important for all of your trees, but especially on citrus. One application of iron at the first of the year when you do the first application of fertilizer will pretty typically take care of a lot of yellowing issues. If it doesn't, like it did with my kumquat over here, if it doesn't, then at least I know that it's not iron. So that is an application that I do at the first of every year, along with my initial fertilizing, which I do in February. I use the easy dates to remember to fertilize it at Valentine's Day in February, Memorial Day and Labor Day. In between that, if the trees show that they need something, then yeah, I can address it. But other than that, that's kind of my personal philosophy of going along with it. But iron on all of the trees. In Las Vegas, it is best to find a brand that offers an EDDHA chelated iron. What that, and I don't know why some of the local stores don't carry it, because the EDDHA is formulated for high pH soils, which we have a serious problem with in the desert. None of the local stores carry the EDDHA except for Veragrow, where a lot of us get our soil at. Veragrow actually has a lot of soil amendments, and since Bob Morris consults for them, he carries a lot of the things that he recommends. But you can put an iron down. It may be sufficient, it may not, because of our high pH, but you can order that online. Just look for an EDDHA chelated iron, and it is water soluble, easy to put on. Do that once a year, and that should take care of any iron problems. Now, speaking of high pH soils, I've tested mine before and it's been as high as 8.5. I just tested another place where I've been working real hard because I've got a problem with a citrus tree that keeps dropping its fruit, and I was happy to see I've got that area down to about 5.5. It's already dropped its fruit for this year, but if I monitor that maybe next year, I can get that orange tree to give me a whole bunch of fruit again. It's dropped it for 2 years in a row. This is something that has to be in your tool chest, and it is soil sulfur that helps lower the pH of alkaline soils. This is not something that is a one-time application. You do it and it's over with. It has to become as religious of a practice as doing fertilizer. And that's the reason I have a big bag of it. If you could apply it once and be done, that would be nice. I have a lot of trees, so I have a big bag. But it is granulated, so it looks somewhat like the manufactured fertilizer. But soil sulfur is used to correct alkaline soils, those with a high pH. An absence of sulfur in the soil is indicated by plant leaves turning yellow. This is slow acting but long lasting, and that is the truth. You have to apply this several times during the year, and if you look at its instructions here on established plants, apply twice a year, once in the spring and once in the fall. Then it gives you a formula, a 1/4 cup for each foot of plant height. If you've properly fed and you've given iron and your trees are not responding, this is probably this is the next step that I went to, and I'm using this religiously now. Also, in a lot of the big box stores, in this section where you find these type of products, they will have a bag that is called soil acidifier, and it's for some specific flowers, I believe. If you only have, and also, by the way, this is offered in a 5-pound bag, and it's about $1 a pound. But if you only have a few plants in pots or something, a little bag like this might be okay. I don't know what in the world I'm doing with garden lime, because this raises the soil pH, but it was in the bin. But anyway, you can find it like that. The next thing to talk about is that rest of the nutrition. When this is not responding and this has been applied, so the main thing about having your pH level right, especially in citrus, is that whatever nutrients you give it, when your tree is in that mode and in a high alkaline environment, the tree won't take up the nutrition. So for citrus, and really that applies for stone fruits even, need a lower pH. So this is not something that's just for citrus. If you're growing peaches and plums and apricots, a lower pH will give you a better quality fruit. They can survive it better and don't show the symptoms as much as citrus do, but every tree can use it, especially tropicals. You guys want to grow tropical trees, I think almost every tropical tree has got to have a low pH. So next comes, what is the next nutrition if I know iron is not it? Most probably, I found out that it's magnesium, and that can be taken care of with common Epsom salt. Epsom salt, all it is magnesium sulfate, and you can see what it's used for relief of occasional constipation. And it seems like I get that in dealing with trees every now and then, but this is not for me. It's to go on the trees. It is water soluble. Just put like a teaspoon per gallon into your water, I believe is the correct formula for that, and it will respond to it pretty easily. This is the first thing that I did, and it seemed like that the little problem child over with the orange seemed to respond to it pretty well. The kumquat behind me didn't, and that's when I go to one of my favorite solutions, and this is available at Star, and it's vitamin B1, and it says plus minor elements and a chelating agent. Now this is a marketing ploy because no plant needs vitamin B1. If you look at the 16 elements and nutrients that plants need, none of them is vitamin B1, but it sure sounds good. And what this has in it is a combination of the three most prominent things that a plant is going to be absent of. So it has iron, manganese, and zinc. If you look on down just a little bit lower from it, it said it also contains non-plant food ingredient 0.1% of vitamin B1. I really like this product for transplanting things. It seems to help out with shock, and I try to keep it around all the time. But this was the final agent that helped me get most of these citrus trees back in line. Now, if your soil pH is high, another option that you have if you want instant gratification, which all of us want, is to use a water-soluble fertilizer and do a foliar leaf spray. And you can use your choice of type of fertilizers that you want to. That's anything that's water soluble, and you don't have to have a big expensive backpack. You can take a small sprayer like this and put a gallon in it, and probably pretty well take care of a single tree, or maybe even a couple of them. And by water soluble, it's just exactly what it means. Get something in a powdered form. A lot of these are available off the shelf in either powder or liquid forms at some of the local nurseries. I choose to use a couple of different things. This one is a kelp solution. It's very inexpensive to use. This particular one is OMRI certified soluble kelp. It requires just 1/4 of a teaspoon per gallon, and in a foliar spray, that's what it says to use. Spray a fine mist until it drips off the plants. And using this, the soil pH doesn't matter because you're going directly into the cells of the trees. So if you want more instant results, this is the way to go. Or if in between the fertilizing calendar that I personally use, if I see a tree that needs something that's deficient, using the sprayer and a foliar spray is the easy way to do it. Kelp for Less has been pretty good for me. They're pretty reasonable priced. They're pretty good service. They have a lot of different things. This is a kelp and humic blend, and it is a 004. Another product that I use is Extreme Blend. It's high in nitrogen, a 1206. So we're looking for green growth and root growth on it. But even if you choose to use something like heaven forbid, Miracle Grow, I don't want the organic Nazis to get on me for that, but I do use not Miracle Grow, but another similar brand of it on my house plants. It's water soluble, it's cheap, it's effective, it works. I don't use it on any of my outside plants because the internet has got me thinking that it's going to kill me if I do. But anyway, I don't want this to get very much longer, but I hope that that gives you some solutions that will help you out a little bit. If you want to get into testing your soil, these little devices are available at most of the big box stores or at the nurseries. There's also some other solutions that are very inexpensive, a little test kit that's real simple to use to check your nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and your pH level. You can get those for $10 at Lowe's. I have one here that is about $20 because my old eyes sometimes would have a problem seeing exactly what shade of green or blue or orange that was, and I couldn't tell what level it was at. What this gadget does is it reads it for you. You perform the test as you normally would, then put it in here. It analyzes it and tells you if you have a surplus or if it's sufficient or adequate, or if you're deficient or depleted. And this one is available on Amazon. Pretty easy to use. It was about $20. Now another thing too, while I've got it right here, is the reason you need to consistently use and apply sulfur is our water is also alkaline. So every time you water, you're adding something that's a higher pH to it. And I was really kind of amazed. The other day I tested some water, and normally I've seen it 8 to 8.5 before, and I tested my water the other day, and this is actually running at 6 to 6.5, which is the lowest pH I've ever seen in Las Vegas water. I don't know if that's periodic, if that can change from one time of the year to another, or if they're treating things any differently, but I was really surprised to see that. Anyway, this has been long enough. I hope that gives you some solutions. It's not easy, but there's kind of the steps that I go by that has greatly improved what I'm doing in the yard. You can't do nothing. You can't just solve it with one answer or one question, but hopefully that gives you some help. If you like this, let me know. If it was informative, we'll try to do some more. Happy gardening, everyone.